Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Russell Shorto. I'm the director of the John Adams Institute, which is an independent American culture center based here in Amsterdam. Normally, but not always, we bring American speakers to the Netherlands. We're very happy tonight to break from that. We also like to highlight Dutch speakers who have some interesting observations to make about the US, and that's certainly the case with Leo Blokhuis. He last appeared at a John Adams Institute event a couple of years ago when we had Chip Taylor, the singer-songwriter, who is most famous for having written the song Wild Thing. That time, Leo was the moderator, and we're very pleased to have him on the other side of the table, so to speak. This is a new, very swanky space for us. It's the first time I've been here, and it's a really great space. And I think it's very well suited to what we're doing. And normally I come back at the end and then I take care of business, thanking people and so on, and I'm probably not going to do that tonight. So if you will bear with me, I want to get a couple of things out of the way. And one is thanking some of the people who made this possible. I would like to thank People's Place, this space. I would like to thank Ambo Anthos publishers, and as well the sponsors of the John Adams Institute, the Holland America Friendship Foundation, Aegon, the U.S. Embassy, Wolters Kluwer, McKinsey, Google, PwC, Ahold, and DHR International. And I would also like to tell you very quickly about upcoming John Adams Institute events. Tomorrow night, we don't usually have things back-to-back, but tomorrow night we have Chad Harbach, a first-time novelist whose book, The Art of Fielding, was named by Amazon the best book of 2011. So he's a very hot, young American writer, and that event will be at the Aula of the University of Amsterdam on the Spouw. So if you're able to get out twice in a row, then please come. On February 6th, we have an event with Cullen Murphy. His book is called God's Jury, and it's a history of the Inquisition, which is also makes a very provocative case about the Inquisition having played a role in a lot of the sort of dark sides of life today. On March 8th, we have Deborah Scroggins, an American journalist whose new book, Wanted Women, is just out in the US, and it's starting to get reviews. Again, a very provocative book about Muslim women in the West and the different approaches they've taken, and she focuses on a couple of women, one of them well known to most people here, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. That is on March 8th. We're going to have about an hour of conversation punctuated with music here on the stage, and then we will have music with the band Check 1 2, an Amsterdam band which has been around since 2005, and they have a sound that mixes 60s soul, R&B, Americana, and garage music. So after the talk, the music will begin. And once it does, feel free to go to the bar and get a drink. Leo, after the talk, will sign books back where the books are at the table back in this corner. Let me introduce our moderator. Chris Kajna is probably well known to many of you. He is a VPRO broadcaster. He was the anchor for VPRO Radio 1. He also makes television documentaries. He has done in-depth interviews with many heavyweight guests, including Salman Rushdie, Madeleine Albright, Elie Wiesel, and tonight he will add to that heavyweight lineup. Leo Blokhuis, our featured act, is the Dutch pop professor. He's co-host of Top 2000 A Go-Go. His last book, The Sound of the West Coast, won the Golden Tulip Award, and the accompanying album reached gold status. His new book that we are here for is called The Sound of the South, and in it he makes the case that in the early 60s, Southern soul mixed with country music, culturally and otherwise, and something new came of it. Once again, it has received a tremendous amount of attention, which is very well deserved. Please welcome our moderator, Chris Kajna, and our moderator, Chris Kajna, and our guest, Leo Blokhuis.
Good evening. Thank you. And welcome again, Leo. Very good to have you. Yeah, you couldn't miss that. Russell mentioned it. There are very good reasons why you are called the pop professor. Do you, in fact, do you like that to be called the pop professor?
No, actually I didn't until short. The thing is, it sounds so academic, and I don't feel like that. First of all, I don't have the proper education. I did school for journalism, which is an HBO, so I'm not qualified to be called a professor. But then I was in Groningen a couple of weeks ago, which there was an evening, a top 2000 thing, and there were a couple of professors there, real professors, actually giving education to people, and we were talking afterwards about me being a professor, and I'm denying that wholeheartedly. I really don't like it too much. It's of course it's a television thing. I mean, a television thing. Matthijs is the best host, and I am the best. You know, that's what you do when you're on television. Everything gets bigger.
Number one on the list. Yes, always.
You yourself get bigger too on television. Your body. But then. I was talking to one of the professors there, and I said, and he asked me, "Why are you always so furious about being called a professor?" I said, "Because I feel much more like an enthusiastic lover of music than a more academy kind of. You know, it sounds so dull." He said, "Thank you." Do you think we're not enthusiastic about our field of work? But you know, I'm not educated to it, and I like to think of my music in story, the music I like in stories, because it helps me to remember the songs. Because you want to have as much songs in your pocket as possible, and you don't want to learn names. You want to have them in a certain context.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty academic to me, said the professor. And we were talking like that for 10 minutes, and then I surrendered. So it's okay. Just call me a professor.
Okay. Well, I do it if only for this reason, that it gives me the opportunity to ask this most forbidden question in journalism. Professor, why this book?
Why this book? It's selfish, actually. The thing is, my last 2 books are books with 4 CDs with it, and it's really like a boyhood dream to write about music and be able to have people who read about it just listen to it. You know, it's the perfect combination for me. I'm from an age that I used to have these vinyl records.
Yeah. Me too.
You must remember that, buying your record and putting them on the player and spelling out the liner notes, everything, because the first time you listen to an album, you really want to go into it as deep as possible, and you want to drown in it, so to speak.
And you play it for days and days.
Exactly,
on end.
and spell every small font letter that's there, all the text you want to know all about it, and I can feel pretty nostalgic about that, you know. And music is it's so all around. I really had to search for music when I was young, and when I had it, I had to treasure it. And if I heard of something that might be nice, I had to find it. But where do you find it? I mean, wait until it passes by on the radio. I mean, there was no internet. Wait until it passes by on the internet. See if a friend has it, so you can tape it on a cassette. You know, it's that kind of thing. So it's for me, collecting a collection of music and telling something about the special context of that. It's something I've dreamed of doing, and I'm able to do that now, and it's the best thing to do. So for me, it's the best way to earn my money, so to say.
Yeah.
And there are 2 other things. First thing is, this music I'm writing about is my newest music love. It's not the music I grew up with. It's my
okay. That was my next question.
And it's
so
the deepest.
Yeah.
I come back to that. It's the deepest. It's so. I'm so thrilled about it. I could talk about it for days. That's one thing. And the other thing is, the more you dive into it, the more you know, the more you realize that it's more than just music. It's a story about a whole society. It's a story about how a part of America developed, and how I think music is underestimated in its social context.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to say than this is a nice song and that's a nice song.
Yeah,
There's
well,
really a lot more.
we'll
about it.
certainly get into that aspect. But
Nice.
okay, so the other question is, what was your first love in music? If it wasn't this music.
Yeah, I spoke to somebody in the Netherlands, and he said you cannot help the music you grow up with, and the music I grew up with is church music and classical
Well, then
music.
we're really close here too. I mean,
Exactly, but it still is different.
okay.
Because to me, the step from Bach to the Beach Boys is smaller than the step from Bach to Aretha Franklin.
Okay, yeah.
Sonically, pure sonically. So my first love is soft singer-songwriters, West Coast stuff. That's what my previous book was about. Music that soothes your soul, so to say, but on a very soft-spoken way.
Yeah.
The mellow mafia, as they called it, from Los Angeles. It's pretty much that stuff.
Okay, and then this is your newest love.
Yeah.
When and how did it start?
It develops. First, you hear sitting on the dock of the bay and think that I like that. You hear a Bill Withers song and think I like that. But when I was a child, I didn't think that much in genres per se. I remember though that I heard this song. I remember this one.
I've been loving you too long.
This is all you need to know. All you need to hear to fall in love, isn't it?
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you very much. That was it. Yeah.
This is really it. Otis is of course this is Otis Redding. I do remember hearing this song and I thought, what is this guy? And later when you think about it,
When did you first hear it?
I was like 16, 17 or something.
Where was
like
it?
that.
On your boys' room?
Boys' room.
Under the roof?
Yeah, under the roof.
Okay.
And later I realized what soul does, it builds a tension. You know, it's like he's missing all the notes. It's not spot on. And it's like when you sing a country song, for example.
Sometimes it's hard to be a woman.
You know, I like this too.
That's
I
Tammy
like this too.
Wynette?
Tammy Wynette.
That's Nashville?
But it's very clear. Sometimes I have to be a woman, and you know the next song is going to be like that. The next line, and the next line. It's very logical. It's what you expect, and it's rolling down a line. It's rolling down another line. It's pretty much in line. It's all what you expect. But when you hear Otis, you think, oh, where is he going to? What is he going to do? What is he going to do? And he's building up tension, and in one point of the song, you think, there we are, and it's like he doesn't want to hit the note that you know he has to hit in the end, and it's so much different from the modern
all the
R&B
time
song.
reaching for it.
He's
trying.
He's trying, and you know he can, but he doesn't do it. He keeps the tension. He keeps the tension, and
But that's
what they
like-
do nowadays is I've been loving you, you know. But they're not reaching for the note. They're showing off. And what Otis is doing, he's and there it is, bam! Oh man, it makes you so happy if you hear that song. It is completely fulfilling in what you want to music. To
Okay,
me,
but
to me.
I absolutely agree with you. But that's almost. I mean, of course, it's an emotional thing too. But it's also almost a technical thing. To what kind of sentiment did this song appeal to you in that room up in the attic?
Sex. I was a boy. I mean, that's what I say now. And this whole story I told, I wasn't realizing that when I was 17. Of course not. Later on, you think, what makes soul music so special? And then thinking about it, 2 years ago, I couldn't have told you this story. That's what develops. But it is so, I say sex, but it's so physical. You know, you can almost feel that music. It's much different from other music that I like. Our House, it's beautiful, but it's soothing. You know, it's like cream or something. And this is cutting inside, but it's on a different level.
There's agony in it.
Exactly, there's agony in it, and it's like it's entering you on a different. It's with love, it's with religion, and it's with art. It's not something that it's not fully here, but it's your whole body. I once read that listening to music activates the most parts in your brain, but I think they should look further. I think it activates your whole body. Yeah, really. I think, I mean, it's not all about sex. I mean, but that's the closest thing, you know. I once told a story about Prince, because I come from a very religious family. My father was a preacher man, and he was not. Well, he was old-fashioned, but I don't blame him. You know, that's what he comes from. But Prince was really way too far from them. That was. You don't go there. You know, sing like a woman, crawl on the stage, talk about sex all the time. But if you, it is so physical, and it's so about everything that you can put words to. That you have to put that whole feeling and that whole soul into it to you know, that's what it's all about. And to me, for that reason, this kind of music and religion and love is pretty much the same league. Yeah, it's
it's
okay.
clear. Let's get into the music. And what I forgot to say is I'm not gonna do like first we talk and then questions and answers. So whenever you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll.
I was told
we'll
to talk into the microphone, but there are people there too, so that's a bit rude. Sorry. Hi.
Okay, let's get into the roots of the music more. The whole thing about your book and about the soul of the South is the blend between soul and country. But then of course it starts before that because soul itself is a blend. Where does soul come from?
Everything is a blend. Soul is a stage in rhythm and blues. Rhythm and blues is the first blend is the modern rock music is from America, from the south of America more precisely, and it's a blend between Africa and Europe. That's the quickest way to tell. The feel, the rhythm side, the backbeat side, and the art of improvisation is from Africa, and the melody and the clever arrangements and the story structure is from Europe. And there's no other place in the world that it could come together but in America, and there's a very bad reason for that. We as Dutch played a pretty important role in that by being so kind to transport all those people from Africa to America. But let's not go there. I mean, that is what happened. It's a fact. We can't change that. But the good thing about it is it was a forced way of getting two different tribes together. And funny enough, it's not Africa and America, but the Americans, the original Americans, were pretty much wiped out. It was Africa and Europe that came together in the southern parts of the United States. And that blended into blues, into something that evolved into rock and roll. But I think it's going too far to discuss all the steps of that. But say in the early 50s, you have something that we would call rock and roll now, or rhythm and blues. And by the time rock and roll evolved in, say, around 1915, it was pretty much captured by white people, and it is a black invention. It comes from the black music, and when the whites took over, the whites actually took over pretty much of the rock music. There was another need for the blacks to have their own.
They needed another outlet.
Yeah. Which is a second stage into rhythm and blues, which is soul. Yeah, and it's more influenced by the church than rock and roll is. And it's more into that improvisational stuff that is specifically the blacks. Sorry about me talking about white and black, but it's the easiest way to explain it. Of course, I think very very delicate and I'm sensitive about those things, but we have to go with big steps through this whole history. So that's in the bigger line. That's what happened. Yeah. And the funny thing is, when you come to the south of America, this black new kind of rhythm and blues blended with something that was typically white, which is the hillbilly music, the country music.
You say hillbilly, is that the same as bluegrass, or what?
Hillbilly is before country, and so in that way also before bluegrass.
Okay.
Bluegrass is specifically Kentucky.
Before we go to country, let's stick to soul a little bit, because you also say there's different kinds of soul. I mean, you had big soul labels in the North. You had Chess in Chicago, Motown in Detroit.
Exactly.
You had Atlantic, Jerry Wexler. You mention him in the book in New York, but you say the soul from the South is different from the soul from the North. What's the difference?
This is the soul from the North. I love it. It's the Four Tops, and this is the soul from the South. Can listen to that for days.
And what's the difference that you hear?
The difference is, the funny thing is, the Northern soul sounds more poppy, more excessive. And the funny thing is, when I first started listening to this stuff, I thought that Northern soul that must have a lot of white influences. But the funny thing is, it's the other way around. Motown was proud to be an all-black label. Secretary till manager, the keyboard player up to the solo singer, they were all black, and they were proud to be black. They were in isolation. They were black. And in the South,
they were from the ghetto.
In a way, yeah, but they wanted to prove themselves as a full-fledged company. Mm-hmm. And in the South, they didn't think like that. They were just into making music, and whatever the way was, they could make music. They would make music. But practically all of the Southern soul songs, the deep soul as they call it, it's deep soul, is made by blacks, both blacks and white. Usually, it's a black singer accompanied by a white band or a partly white band, and the white band is from their history. Their history is hillbilly, is pre-country, is the Grand Ole Opry. It's people playing violins and playing banjos and playing specific guitar licks that are into country. And those people fell in love with rhythm and blues, started to play and accompanying those black singers. So there's a perfect blend between country and soul there down south. And the strong thing about country is it has a very strong way of writing songs. It is a very strict form. But there's also a similarity between country and soul, and that's the sentiment. It's both. Mm-hmm. If you translate it literally into Dutch, you'd be ashamed.
This is people's place. It's people's music, isn't it?
It's people's music, but it sounds like you can't say that. You can't say that if you translate. It's so emotional. It is so emotional. It's both country and soul, but
it's what we call smart lappen, in fact.
Exactly, it's pretty close to that. It's the folk music. It's old folk music, as a matter of fact. But the black influence is bigger in America than in Holland.
And it's poor music. It's poor man's music.
It's not sophisticated.
No.
They didn't have no money to have strings and orchestras and stuff like that. It's true.
No. So let's try and redo the journey that you did in your book, and we'll get to the places, we'll get to the studios, and we'll get to the songs. Your book is literally a journey along those places. Where do we start?
I'd say we start in Muscle Shoals. In the book, I start in Nashville. Nashville, I don't need to tell you a lot about. Nashville is capital of country, and but as we learn later on, first it was the capital of country, and that's not a coincidence. It is the capital of country because of a specific radio show that was broadcasted from there. And that's called Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opry is the place to be for a country artist. So people went to Nashville to perform in the Grand Ole Opry. That attracted record companies to have a southern office. That was all settled in Nashville, so Nashville became the center of country. Memphis, on the other hand, is the center of soul. It's got Stax, it's got Goldwax, it's got some pretty important soul labels. And right in the middle, a bit more down south, is a small place, and that's called Shoals. Shoals is in the northern part of Alabama. It's still there, and I really, if you go there, go and have a look. It's funny because there's nothing to do there. It's really as sleepy as a town can be in America, but there is still the Fame studio, and Fame was founded on the success of one singer. He used to be the bellboy of the local hotel, and his name is Arthur Alexander. And Arthur Alexander was a black singer who had a white band accompanying him. And this is in '61. And in '61, recording a record is rocket science. I mean, in the studio, you had people with white coats telling you exactly what to do, putting you into your position, and studios were too expensive to, that was really something different than we do now on our loft and just record at home. It was really different. And if you wanted to have a hit, you had to go either to Nashville, Memphis, New York, Los Angeles, or New Orleans. Those were the cities to record hits. And a small town village wouldn't have any possibility to make a hit. But then there was those guys who were dreaming like for a couple of years to get into music. And Arthur was the guy who had the songs, and he wrote this one.
You asked me to give up the hand of the girl I love.
And this became a hit. This is in 1961, so this is 50 years old now.
But so how did they get the equipment? Because
they had equipment, and they were bold enough. They had a studio which used to be a tobacco plant, a tobacco store that was empty, and they put up 4 microphones. They had a mixing board with 4 inputs and 1 output. So that was not the rocket science that I was talking about. But yes, you can record like that, and that's what they did. And they brought it out, but they didn't have no way to promote that, and you have to press the 7-inch singles and stuff like that, and bring it out to all the radio stations. So they have to shop with it to first to get it played in Nashville, and from Nashville out. That's those guys were dreaming of breaking into Nashville. That was what their dream was. Get out of Shoals and get into Nashville and make it big in the record industry.
And who exactly were those guys? Because Arthur Alexander was black?
Yeah.
But were there white musicians? Was this already the
organizer was Rick Hall. That was the guy who was bold enough to invest in a recording machine and 4 microphones and a couple of cables and a mixing board.
And he was white?
He was white. And then you have the musicians, and 2 important musicians by that time were Dan Penn and Spooner Oldham, a keyboard player, and a couple more. But that's too. So this was a full white band playing their country licks in a soulful way and having this beautiful soulful voice that makes it something that they would eventually call country soul.
Yeah, you met Dan Penn. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
He's the writer of what I think the most beautiful songs in this genre.
Yeah.
You met him. Could he explain? I mean, we're talking '61. We're talking Alabama. This is still Jim Crow era.
Exactly.
This is segregation. This is American apartheid. How did these white boys and black boys come together in a studio? How did it happen?
That is so amazing, because they couldn't come anywhere legally together. I mean, if they would go to a club or a bar, they would have to go separate. Arthur didn't have any voting right because it's Alabama. Alabama was a dry state by that time. They couldn't get any drinks. They couldn't do anything that we think now is normal to do for a rock musician. But they had this friend. His name is Tom Stafford, and his father had a drugstore. He was the local drugstore keeper, and Tom, the son of the drugstore keeper, was the manager of the movie theater, in the local movie theater. which was of course a sleeping movie theater, and they had what do you call it, a balcony
Yeah.
that was always empty. So the friends gathered on the balcony, and that was like free space. That was who they knew they would let in, and there was no one gonna stop them.
No segregation
No
there.
segregation there on the balcony of the movie theater. Downstairs it was separated in black and white, but there they had friends, and he had some nice stuff from the drugstore, you know, to get. So that was fun there, and they were dreaming up there about making it into music. All of them, they had their dreams, and. This Rick Hall was not the nicest person. He was the most persistent in what he was trying to do, and he was the one bold enough to buy this equipment and say, if we talk about it, let's do it now. Let's do it then. Let's really do it. And out of it came this song, and it turned out to be a hit. And that gave him the confidence to go further. The guy that he rented the tobacco shop from said, "Oh, you're rich now, so I make your the amount you pay each month for me 10 times higher because you're rich.
Yeah.
I raise your rent by 10 times because you're a rich man now." And he said, "No, we're not gonna do that." So he had some money from his dad and from his hit and everything, and he built the first Fame studio, which is still in Shoals. The studio is still there. It's now on a big parking lot. It's between the CVS pharmacy and the Taco Bell. There's an old building. It's still there. And the funny thing is, if you go to America and you go to a studio which has some history, the Sun Studio or the Stax Studio or whatever, you buy $10, you get in, and it's lovely. And I went to Shoals and I saw the studio and I felt, you don't expect it on a parking lot like that. And oh man, let's get in. And it was 6 o'clock, and I opened the front door, and it was open. And I stepped in, and there was no hall. I was in an office, and I saw a desk that was empty. It got a nameplate, Rick Hall. And there was his secretary, and that was it. There was nothing. There was nobody. It was all wood covered. It looked very ancient. And I was waiting, and I thought, this is too bold. We're just from Holland. We're just popping into a studio, and we heard some musical noises from out of the back. And then suddenly came this lady, a bit fat lady, but you know, it's Alabama, so they're all well-to-do ladies, and she looked really healthy, but a little big. And she said, "What are you doing here? Where are you from? But really nice. It's this Southern hospitality really exists in Alabama." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to break in, but we're from Holland, and we're so excited about the music that's here." "All the way from Holland? What do you do here?" I said, we just love the music that's made here. "Be my guest, come in. There is the studio, go up there, go in, take pictures, do whatever you want. I'll be with you in a minute, and you can ask me anything you like." And we went up three steps up, and to the left there was Studio 1. And they had pictures on the wall. You saw Otis Redding, you saw Aretha Franklin, you saw Sam and Dave, you saw all these people who have recorded there. And nothing had changed. It's exactly how it was. It's exactly the same way as it was. And I really felt, you know, goosebumps all over it. And why that is, I don't know. But it felt like ground that made history, really. And but it's still there.
Yeah. But let's stick to the boys on the balcony for a minute. They were so you have I don't know if you should say white trash, but probably lower class white people. Yeah. Black people who were almost all lower class those days in the South. It was also the era, the beginning of the civil rights movement.
Exactly.
You've been speaking to those people, to Dan Penn, to Spooner Oldham. Were they in any way politically motivated, or was it only about making music?
It was all about making music. It was not just in Shoals. It also happened in Memphis. I spoke to both Booker T. Jones, who is a black keyboard player, and his guitar player, Steve Cropper, who is white. And I spoke to him separately about this issue. And it's like they don't want to talk about it. It's no issue at all. They said, as soon as we walked in the door, color moved from our face. It disappeared. There was no color in our studio.
And they didn't discuss civil rights at that time?
No.
Either.
The only thing is, when they went on tour, when they went out of the road, then they noticed there was difference. So, and the blacks didn't have too much trouble with that. It was the whites who were attacked by it. hey, what are you doing with those black guys? Come on, you're not supposed to be here. That's what they said. And there's one great story I read in a book by Barney Hoskins, who's a great writer on pop music. He said he spoke to Carla Thomas, the daughter of Rufus Thomas, on the Stax label in Memphis, a black singer, a female black singer. She's great. And she was out with the Marquis, who's a full white band, and she was playing up north in Detroit, in a black club. And they felt a lot of tension in this club. It was the atmosphere was really tensed, up to a certain moment that the band really felt so threatened that they decided they flee off the stage. They didn't feel safe, and they thought this whole crowd is coming after us. So they went off stage, back in their dressing room, and Carla Thomas, who's of course up front on stage, she was singing, and she heard her band move, and she was like, "Guys, what are you doing? Leaving me here with all those niggers?" And I think that's the best example how they felt. They didn't feel like she was black and the band was white, but they felt we were the band and those are the blacks, and they're in a way against us because we're together here. And this story also proves that it was not only a white problem, but it was only it was also a black problem in those days.
Yeah. So in Muscle Shoals, first the tobacco shop, later the Fame studio. What's the best song to emerge from that studio?
This is funny. I played it. I could play a couple of songs, but that song that I
but there's
I
only
just
one
played,
best.
Okay, then I'm going for this one, and it has a nice story to it. That's Percy Sledge's. Percy Sledge he worked in a hospital, changing bedpans, stuff like that, and he was known as the singing guy on the
Changing bedpans.
changing bedpans. And if a patient had trouble getting to sleep, he would sing him to sleep. He was a real nice guy. And in the evenings and in the weekends, or when he was off, he was doing some local shows with his band. And he has his girlfriend, and this was really when he was young and she was young. And his girlfriend moved to Los Angeles because she could get a better job there, and so they kind of broke up for that, and he felt really sad about it, and he asked his band to improvise on a certain schedule, a chord schedule, and he improvised a song which evolved into the song that is my favorite one. And the other funny thing about it is, so Rick Hall was the guy to beat in Muscle Shoals, and that you have always these people around that also want to be in the music and stuff like that. And there was this one guy, and he was called Quinn Ivy, and Quinn Ivy was a local DJ, but he was very much interested into recording music, but he didn't know anything about it. But he was fond of the music, and he wanted to do something about it. And he said at a certain point, he said to Rick Hall, he said, "Rick, what if I make my own studio, build my own studio, and all the stuff that you don't record, I can choose from that, pick from that, and I do some recording there." Rick Hall said, "It's no problem, do that." So he rented an empty bar in the center of Sheffield, which is a city in the same area as Muscle Shoals. It's all one big. Well, city is a big word, but
Agglomeration.
Agglomeration, the Quad City they call it now. So he was on the strip there in an empty bar. In the 50s, it was a rough bar. I spoke to one of the guys that worked there. He said people got stabbed here. It was really tough. So this bar was empty. It's a strange foreign bar, and he had 4 microphones and the same setup, and one small mixer and one Rick Hall wasn't too interested in recording this singing hospital guy, so he said, "You do that." And Quinn Ivy spoke to Percy Sledge, and he said, "I really like that song that you were playing. Come to my studio, and we'll have it record." And he did that, and out of it came this song, "This When a Man Loves a Woman." And I spoke to the guy who recorded it, and he said we had 4 channels. Just a little bit of technical information, which is nowadays to record a drum kit you need 8 tracks. a band is 24, 36 tracks to record properly. So they only had 4. There was 1 track for the drums, 1 track for the bass, 1 track for the organ, and 1 track for the lead singer. And then in a second take, they had 1 track for a guitar, 1 track for all the horns together, and 1 track for all the backup vocals all together. So this is really simple. So you had to have the mix right, spot on. That's what it is, because there's no way to change the mix. What we do now is, a little bit much higher. Each segment you can adjust to whatever you like until you're mad. But those guys really had to do it in 1 take, and
So
out of it came this. But the funny thing is, in the end, you have the horns. Those were local guys playing horns. The funny thing is, they felt we had a hit, and Quinn Ivy brought it to Rick Hall, and he said, "This is too good. We can't waste it. We have to do something." And Rick Hall had an acquaintance, and he was from New York, and he was Jerry Wexler, the guy from Atlantic. He was a real big guy in the music scene those days. So they sent this song to Jerry Wexler, and Jerry said, "This is amazing. I want to have this released, but the horns are way out of tune. We don't listen to that way, but the horns are way out of tune." So he said, "We do that, but we make a new recording, and we take care of the horns. We have professional horn players, and make sure they play in tune." And now the funny thing is, so once they released the single, the tapes went to the factory. You know how that works, and they make 5,000 singles out of it or something like that. But the factory made a mistake. They took the wrong take. But I think it's a blessing. I think it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
I really think those out-of-tune horns add to the feeling of this song. It makes it a much more intense song. You don't want it all. Tune is just, that's just what you hear. You feel this song right. You feel it as a right song. So you don't have to be a scientist to just listen to it and know, okay, yeah, this is punchier, this is more accurate, but the other one, that got the feeling. Now I do believe what he's saying.
There's another connection between Jerry Wexler from New York and Atlantic and the Fame Studios, and that's Aretha Franklin. He had Aretha Franklin, that was his artist in New York.
Yeah.
And he sent her down to the Fame Studios. And then what happened?
He had a good reason for that, because Aretha Franklin has been recording for 6 years in New York with Columbia Records, and she didn't have any hit at all. There's a big misunderstanding about Aretha Franklin, that she made bad records. She couldn't. So those early 60 records from Aretha, they are marvelous. They're cheap. Buy them. They're cheap and they're stunning. But it's not soul. It's more jazzy soul. It's different. They are not as much on the edge as the later. And I think that's... Aretha Franklin was born in Memphis. If you go to the place where the Stax studio used to be and is rebuilt, then you go left, right, left, and then you're in a street and you see a one-shot shack, they call it. So that's a house, and if you open the front door and the back door, you can shoot, and the bullet will go straight through the back door out of the house. So this is a small house, and Aretha Franklin was born in Memphis, but her father was a preacher man, a minister, and he went up north. He went to Detroit, actually, and it was really close, or Aretha Franklin was signed to the local soul label, which was Motown. Motown, of course, but, well, that's a different story. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. So Aretha went, her father said no, and he brought her to New York, and that's why they were signed to Columbia. It didn't work really well. And then they were signed to Jerry Wexler, and Jerry Wexler says, "I know that the music that you need is made down south. We need to go back south." So Aretha and her husband, Ted White, who of course is black, and
what's in the name?
They were married, and Ted White was the manager of Aretha Franklin. Now I've met some managers who are married to their stars. That's really tough. If you're a journalist or if you work with radio or television or with a record company, that's really tough. But anyway, so the two of them went south, and they ended up in the Fame studio in Shoals. And Aretha, not a lot of people know that, but the grand piano on all Aretha records are played by Aretha herself. She's a marvelous piano player. She's a really nice composer. And so they started, when she was in Shoals, they started playing this. Actually, I wanted to say, I just started. This is Spooner Oldham. He invented this one. But Aretha, she was sitting at the piano and playing and singing, and all the guys, they didn't know how fast they needed to go to their instruments because they instantly knew this girl's got a lot of talent. So they recorded "Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You," and they were kind of celebrating, "Whoa, we got our hit, Whiskey." Forbidden, but of course in the studio you have whiskey, and everybody was happy. And there was one horn player. And he was making a move towards Aretha. He was a white horn player, and I got different stories. And the funny thing is, I got stories from people that actually were there. Jimmy Johnson, the guitar player, both Dan Penn, who was there, and Dan Penn said, "I think he slapped her on her butt or something." Which is a bad thing to do, I know, but by that time it was, that's what you do. Anyway, Ted White, the husband of Aretha, saw it, and he got furious. So he went off to his hotel. In the lunch break, Dan Penn wrote a song which would be suitable as the B-side of "I Never Loved a Man." And that's for the younger people. You have on the old 7 inches, you have a flip side. You need to have a flip side. And it's smart to write a flip side because the 7 inch is sold in a shop, and the royalties are split between A and B because you don't know why the people buy the song, of course. So people are very keen to write a flip side. So Dan Penn wrote a song during the lunch break, and that's this one. It's an incredible song.
Let's have it for some time.
Okay.
Take me to heart, and I'll always love you, and nobody can make me do wrong. Take me for granted, leaving love unshown, makes willpower weak and temptation strong. A woman's only human. You should understand. She's not just a plaything. She's flesh and blood, just like her man. If you wanna do right, hold day, woman, you gotta be a do-right, whole night man.
This is your favorite, right?
One of them. But, I mean, temptation strong, that's what he saw in the morning, and that's what he wrote down at lunchtime.
Exactly.
Could it be like that?
It might be. You never know where a song comes from. But the funny thing, not funny, but the thing is, so he wrote it on a napkin, and they started to record that after lunch break. But then phone rang. Ted White, furious, and he spoke to Rick Hall, who was engineering the whole session, and who was, of course, the owner of the studio. So Ted said, I want my wife back now, and I don't want to bow. And Jerry Wexler was there. He said, oh, wait, he will cool off, no problem. I'll talk to him later. But Rick Hall felt, he felt a bit awkward about it, and he said, no, I'm going to solve that. So he went to the hotel, which was not the best thing to do, because Rick Hall was pretty short-tempered himself. So he went to the hotel, and while his wife was recording the most beautiful soul song ever in the Fame studio, Ted White was swearing and fighting and fuzzing with Rick Hall. First, the rednecks and the niggers were thrown in the lobby of the hotel, and in the end, they really were fist fighting like schoolboys and rolling over the carpet. So that was the end of Aretha Franklin in Muscle Shoals. She's been there exactly for 1 day. She recorded 2 songs, Never Love the Man the Way I Love You, and Do Right Man, Do Right Woman. And that was it. So Ted took his wife, flew her home, and he swore, and he kept the promise, he swore he would never come back to Muscle Shoals, to that terrible farmer city Muscle Shoals. But the thing is, even Ted understood that this band and this feeling was gold for Aretha. They knew it. So what they did is they flew the band to New York, and they needed like 5 days to record a whole album. And that's how they did it the rest of the career of Aretha Franklin. All the hits Think, Do Right Man, Never Love the Man, all those hits are they are recorded in New York, but with the band that originates from Muscle Shoals.
Okay, we're running behind on your schedule. So
Oh, is there a schedule?
on your travel schedule and our time schedule here, we're not going to make all the places. But let's move on to the next place, which is Memphis.
Memphis, that would be Memphis, and Memphis. Memphis has so much. Memphis has Stax, of course, which is also a company that was founded by 2 white people, and that was like it's
similar circumstances, like some back room of a shop, or
similar. Actually, they in the end they found a theater. Yeah, they found an old movie theater that was out of use, and doors were open, and literally everybody stepped in that was interested in music. But then you had a kid called Steve Cropper, or you had Isaac Hayes walking in, and in the end they ended up like the big stars. But that was and this is what Steve Cropper said. As soon as we walked into that theater, there was no color. We were just there
Steve
making
Cropper
music.
is the white guitar player of Booker T and the MGs.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's a co-writer of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, so he has some credits in music.
Say that again.
Not far from the Stax studio is the High studio, the High recording studio, and that is a bit later than we're in the early 70s, late 60s. And that is the studio where Willie Mitchell had his office and his beings. And I'm quickly scanning my my list because where are they? Wait, I'll do it differently, because that is where this guy. He's still in. Sorry, I could have prepared this better. So this is Al Green. This is the more slick, the more smooth soul sound.
Sophisticated.
Much more sophisticated, but still it has some soul. Al Green is still around, and while I was in Memphis, I was determined to go to his church, because if you go to Memphis, go to the church, which is around the corner with Graceland, so you can't miss it. And Al Green will be there every Sunday, preaching and singing and inviting you up front to say where you're from if you're a tourist. So you're most welcome. The only thing is, while I was in Memphis, Al Green was in Europe.
But is that also, this is later in time, but is that also a development that it really started in Muscle Shoals and Memphis took over?
You can't say that.
It all happened together.
Actually, the development is that we have all these great soul singers, these great black soul singers, and what happened eventually is that the whites found out about what was going on there, and so you had people like this coming up to Memphis to profit from the sound that is made there.
Billy Ray was the preacher's son, and when his daddy would visit, he'd come along.
This is, of course, Son of a Preacher Man by Dusty Springfield. Dusty Springfield had made a couple of records in London. She's from England, but they're very sophisticated. They're very orchestrated and slow but she was on Atlantic too. So Jerry Wexler was her label boss too. So he said, come to the South, and she ended up in Memphis recording stuff like this, and that happened to a lot of people. So what you see is first it's really soul, and then it broadens, and what also happens is that you have Nashville as the country city, but because of the people that were coming from Muscle Shoals, coming to Memphis, coming to Nashville, that also influences Nashville. On my book, I have a couple of CDs, and I was bold enough to put this song to it, because Bob Dylan once went to Nashville in 1969, and he recorded Nashville Skyline, which was really the most stupid thing to do for a guy like his, because country was in the rest of America was regarded as, well, that's the music they play, in Alabama or in the small villages.
I think he was smart. He wanted to get out of his image.
That's true, and in that way that was smart. So he recorded an album that is Nashville Skyline, which is said to be his country album, but I think it's got a lot of soul to it. And listen to this. I don't think this is straight country.
Throw my ticket out the window.
Here's another thing. Soul needs a real good singer. Really good singing is one of the... Bob Dylan is not known as the best singer around, and his last show in Rotterdam was last year, and a friend of mine came there and he reviewed the show as great, 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 and there was a lot of talk about his singing that wasn't that good anymore, and this guy said there's a lot of reasons to go and see Bob Dylan live, and his ability to sing is one of the last.
Yeah.
And that is true, I think, but there's still plenty left. But here, you hear a really, really nice singing Bob Dylan, in my opinion.
He does something with his voice.
Yeah, but he sings.
Throw my suitcase out there too.
Ah, well, I think this is pretty soulful
Yeah,
for a guy
no,
from Manhattan.
Absolutely. So you talked to Booker T and the MGs, which was the house band of Stax
Yeah.
in Memphis. What was their story? What kind of guys are they? They're all still alive, I think?
No, Al Jackson, the famous, the guy that used to be the drummer, is dead. He was shot with a drive-by shooting accidentally. But, well, that happens down south.
You already said they were absolutely not politically motivated.
No,
what was their story?
Their story is they walked in as kids, fascinated by music, and they started to make music. And first of all...
And they lived around the corner?
Really. They walked up to the studio, which is a strange thing to do in America.
So there was a white guy living on this side and a black guy living on that side?
The thing also is, because that separation between black and white it's it was in buses, in theaters, in bars and everything. But where they found each other is really on the bottom end of society. Yeah. They found each other in poorness.
Poor man's neighborhoods.
That's what happened, and that's where these people know each other from. So that's where they came, and actually Steve Cropper walked in, and he was selling records in the neighboring record store that was part of the Stax agglomeration. So he was, but he turned out to be one of the biggest guitar players in the end. But that was a kind of coincidentally thing, and they started to be that good that everybody wanted to sing with them. So they ended up as the house band of the Stax studio. So everything. Sam and Dave, Booker T, Booker T, of course, Otis Redding, Rufus and Carla Thomas, and later on Isaac Hayes. They all played with Booker T and the MGs as the basic of those four people were always the thing they started with.
So what's the song where we hear them at their best?
Actually. If you really want to grasp their sound, it's not in my book. But if you want, you can just listen to them as they were, and that's something like this. This is a coincidence. This song that.
That's Steve Cropper, right?
Yeah. This is funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he had seen Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings here in Paradiso, which is now one of the hottest soul bands around, I think. And he was fascinated about that show, and he said, the funny thing is they don't really play it that well. I thought, they play really well. He said, no. There was one song, and halfway the song, Sharon gave each one of them a solo. And they couldn't do that. It was rubbish. So I said to him, now you point me the first real proper solo in a soul record, soul and solo, that is different worlds. That's not what you do. You everything you do is dedicated to the feeling of the song, and it's not an exposure of your abilities on the instrument, but it adds to the atmosphere of the song. So that's what it does. And the funny thing about this thing is Booker T was booked with this band for a rockabilly singer to record. The guy didn't show up, so they started fuzzing, and Green Onions was a theme that Booker T. Jones had on a piano. And but because he was on the organ, he started playing this, and Steve did and and the drumming, everything fell into his place, and they were jamming for that like 10 minutes, and then the engineer said, "Okay, now you have something for the flip side." And they said, what are you doing? So they kind of accidentally recorded that, and it turned out to be one of the biggest hits out of Stax. It's 1962, this is very early, and that established them as a band. But if you really want to have their best achievement as a band, then I of course I'll have to get back to Otis, because that is absolutely the greatest soul singer of all, and this is the best song he ever sung, I think. Memphis horns.
Oh, she may be weary. Them young girls, they do get wearied wearing that same old shaggy dress. Yeah.
Listen to the organ. You don't need a solo for that.
But when she gets weary, try a little tenderness. Yeah.
And here it comes, that's good. Not yet. You're expecting the final, and it's not. So there's even more tension. Yeah, you want to hear when is it going to be resolved? When is it going to fall into its place? It's still not there. There's still tension. This is soul at its best.
That she'll never possess. Yeah. But while she's there waiting, and without them, try.
Here we are. Here's the first full stop. Isn't it amazing? 1 minute 25. I think this is better music than this. It doesn't exist for me.
We should go to New Orleans and discuss a lot more, but I think
it's too late, right?
Well, it's getting too late. Maybe we'll get there, but first, I haven't seen any question fingers yet, but let's go there. There's someone over there.
I just want to make a remark on the Do Right Woman.
Yeah.
Also know because where country meets soul, if you hear Graham Parsons, then that says everything.
Yeah, that's how this music came to me through the Flying Burrito Brothers, and of course Graham Parsons is.
I'm trying to. If I must have this. Not yet, but yeah.
You have the Allman Brother bands on your CDs, but not.
Yeah, and that is the great thing about. But that's the other way around, because Graham Parsons came from pretty much a country background, and he incorporated soul into his music. Not only Do Right Man, but also Dark End of the Street. He did.
That's where soul and country is
definitely meeting. Yeah, definitely, and I think that makes country bearable to me.
Ho, 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 ho.
You need some soul in it, man.
Ever listen to Hank Williams?
But Hank Williams, he got soul. Okay. I definitely think he got soul.
Yeah,
but
sure. But Okay, any other questions? Ik kan het niet goed zien. Oké, daar, ja.
Well, the biggest Christian country songwriter, Dottie Rambo, she's a soul singer as well, from the mid-70s. She's really nice.
Dottie, you're mentioning. I thought you were going to mention the Louvin Brothers, Satan Get Real, which is an amazing country album.
73, 74.
Oh, the Louvin Brothers are 60s. So.
Yeah.
Rambos, they have this really sugar-full Nashville country religious sound, but when you hear the singing, it's soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know it, so I'll have to look for that. What is that? The
Rambos, Dottie Rambo.
Rambo, R-A-M-B-O,
Yes, like the shooting guy.
like the movie.
Okay.
I can remember that.
Guy
Thank
with
you.
with a knife, yeah. Any other questions?
I can't see.
Not really. You sure?
Let's
In the back, one more.
It doesn't. No, there is. I kept it. You know.
The question was, does it touch in any way to the Austin, Texas, which is like what we call old country more than the Nashville slick country kind of music?
Yeah, but it has. It definitely has some soul into it. Wait a minute. I maybe. Yeah, I was just looking for a Doug Sang album, a really late 50s. He was playing with. Wait. Yeah, here we got it, like this.
Why, oh, did you ever have to love me?
This definitely got soul, hasn't it?
Why, oh, did you ever have to care?
So this is Doug Sang with the Marquis in around 60. You know, you have to draw your line somewhere, and I did that through Texas somewhere. Texas is the gray area for me. That's usually where the South ends. If you talk about the history of the United States, you have to limit yourself to a certain area. And what usually happens in Texas, that's more the field where country meets rock meets the singer-songwriter movement. You got the whole start of the Americana movement in Texas, still there. I think it's
Absolutely.
one
Go
of the
to
best.
Austin.
Austin,
and you
is,
don't
of
want to
course.
leave again.
Yeah. But I kept it out of my story. But you know, that's a choice you can fight, of course.
Okay, but since we got to Austin, let's make the last step and let's go to New Orleans. What does New Orleans add to the story of Muscle Shoals in Memphis?
Yeah.
In this respect.
The thing is, New Orleans actually is the birthplace of so many things. You know, the whole the rock and roll and that whole backbeat thing started. You know, actually, if you go further back into the history, New Orleans was the main port where the slaves were brought to, and they spread out of New Orleans. So New Orleans, Congo Square, that's where the first Africans played their music and were influenced by their the white people around them. So it's a big place of inspiration. Actually, it's the place where it all started.
It's the original blend.
It's the original blend. But then later on, the country movement got back to New Orleans. But then New Orleans still has this very specific flavor. So the choking kind is a famous country ballad which is sung by a lot of soul people. But if you hear Alain Toussaint, which is I think the biggest soul star from New Orleans, if you hear him, then you know exactly what New Orleans does to music. I mean, talking about tension in a song and joyness of playing, it's amazing.
I only meant to love you.
you want it all, my mind. Oh yeah. Don't you know your love scares me to death? Oh, joking kind.
And New Orleans in some way always got this bumpy feeling to it, you know.
It's immediately about dancing and
Yeah.
moving, which
Yeah.
I mean, Muscle Shoals is not.
no,
always,
it's more
I mean,
joyous. It's
yeah.
more outgoing. It's more.
It's marching bands. It's out in the street.
Exactly. But that's one of the big influences on the horn parts in the New Orleans music, of course, and they're still marching there.
Yeah,
You know, Treme,
yeah.
the story,
Yeah.
but the movie, the
They're
series.
gonna
the
broadcast it in Holland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's if you want to see something nice about New Orleans music, Treme. It's called after a neighborhood in New Orleans. That's a black neighborhood, so that was hit pretty bad by Katrina. But it's the story about how music helps them to get their lives together. It's full of music. It's one of the best series I've ever seen. HBO quality stuff. But it's coming on Ziggo, not on UPC, isn't it?
I think.
This is not the thing to discuss here.
I know that someone pitched it in Hilversum, and that.
Oh.
And I hope someone bought it. I'm not sure.
So it
but-
might
but
be on
I mean,
on
it can't
national
be that
television.
stupid in Hilversum.
But it's you can buy the DVDs, which is even better. Treme,
Yeah,
Treme. It's an amazing. There's a Dutch guy in it, Michiel Huisman.
Uh-huh.
A Dutch actor is playing in there.
And
Yeah,
Steve
really.
Earle, isn't it?
And Steve Earle.
Talking about music.
Steve Earle, listen what he does. No, really, listen what he does. Because Steve Earle is pretty much the Texas kind of music stuff. So this is really Texas. This is Steve Earle. This is a song that is featured in Treme.
This city won't wash away. This city won't ever drown. Blood and water and hell to pay. Sky tear open, pain rain down. Doesn't matter to come one day. I ever gonna leave this town. This city won't wash away. This city won't ever drown. Ain't the river or the wind.
So this is Texas with New Orleans brass. Man, it doesn't get any better than this.
Stop making me cry.
This is amazing, I think. Anyway, Treme.
I've got two questions left.
Okay.
You say in the book that somehow the Southern soul extinguished
Yeah.
in the 70s.
It does.
Why did it?
Because disco came in.
Hmm.
It's really, I mean, Joe Tex, who was one of the big Southern soul singers, he proves.
There's a beautiful Joe Tex song on one of your CDs.
Is it?
Yes,
You help me.
is. Yeah, that's the thing about they drop.
Oh, I was looking for his hit because in '77 he had hit "Ain't Gonna Bump No More with No Big Fat Woman." Does anybody remember that song? Ain't gonna bump no more with no big fat woman.
Hold what you've got.
Oh, you mean the song? Yeah.
CD1 number 5.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song. But he moved from this beautiful Southern soul into the disco thing. Another girl who did that was Candy Staton. She had the best Southern soul, but in the late 70s she did Young Hearts Run Free, which is a disco hit, or maybe it was even the 80s. And the rest of them they diminished.
And it was a money thing or what?
It was a taste thing. It was money in that way. It didn't sell anymore. So they all ended up in the famous Malaco label, which was a small label that tried to keep the old guys alive, musically spoken. But then in the 80s we had this misunderstanding that we thought drums, it's cheaper to use a computer for that, and on soul that's killing. You shouldn't do that. So there are hardly any proper right soul records from the late 70s up to the 80s, and then in the late 90s we rediscovered soul.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is
and country artists rediscovered it.
Exactly.
You mentioned Lucinda Williams.
Shelby Lynn and her sister Alison Moore, beautiful. But I think again The guy who, because we didn't discuss that, but the guy who kind of started the whole thing, the soul thing,
The Reverend.
that is Mr. Solomon Burke.
Hmm.
He was, to me, he was the guy that put soul back on the map with what was that album? Don't give up on me. Thank you so much. And that was real old fashioned soul. This is one of the tracks from that album.
I shook the hand of the president and the Pope in Rome. I've been to parties where I've had to be flown.
So this is 2000. What is it? 2001 or something? And this is the old-fashioned soul that we knew from the early 70s. And the good thing, I'm rattling on, but there's an important thing I need to tell. The good thing, the good thing is maybe you know Betty LaVette. Betty LaVette was a singer, an unfortunate singer who had a couple of singles in the late 60s and the early 70s, but they went down and nothing really happened. I mean, they didn't sell well and well, anything. So she got in the end she got a deal on the famous Atlantic label. So she thought, now we're gonna make a proper album and we're gonna do some hits, and now people get to know me. This was in 1972, and she did a single and it didn't chart anywhere. So there was no success for her. But she had recorded the whole album with this famous Muscle Shoals band in 1972. But Atlantic decided, okay, you're not gonna have any hits, so why would we put out this record? So they stored a complete album, and they didn't do anything with it, much to the grief of Betty LaVette, of course, because that was kind of her last chance, and she kind of disappeared from the scene. Until in the 90s, she reappeared in the Netherlands, and she played in Vredenburg in Utrecht, and I was lucky enough to be there. She got in contact with Munich, which is a small Dutch record label, and they said, we want to help you to get back your stuff back on track, but we don't have the money to put you into a studio and build and record an expensive, but we can organize a live show. We record that and bring that as your new live album. So they did that, and I was there coincidentally because in the main hall downstairs in Vredenburg was Van Morrison with Candy Dover playing horn. So I wanted
about soul.
Yeah, I wanted to be there. So but I was completely floored by the performance of Betty LaVette. So they brought that out, and that gave her a chance to at least to tour again and to do some things again. And then in 2000, a French company rediscovered the tapes that were Atlantic thought they were burned in a fire in their warehouse, but wasn't. So or a copy, they found it, and I can tell you that is one of the best Southern Soul albums that I've ever heard. This is a bit of it. It's 1972, Betty LaVette. The album is called Souvenirs. This is just a random song from that album. It's an amazing album, and the funny thing is, it was recorded with with the Muscle Shoals rhythm band, the Swampers, as Lynyrd Skynyrd called them, and the bass player from that band is called David Hood. He plays the bass. David Hood has a son, and his name is Patterson Hood, and Patterson Hood is the leader of a band called the Drive-By Truckers. The Drive-By Truckers is a southern rock band. You know them, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
It's a lovely band, and
they're
they're from Alabama, but they're rough. It's a rock band. It's southern rock, you know, long 3 guitar players in a row up front and go.
Loud.
Loud. But the beautiful thing is, because they're from Alabama, and actually from Muscle Shoals, because his father was working in mussel shoals. Betty LaVette, in 2007, went back to the Mussel Shoals studio with the drive-by truckers, and I never understood why the drive-by truckers would accompany Betty LaVette. They did something like this, like this. And the funny thing is, this album is called The Scene of the Crime. The crime that is done to Betty LaVette is that her album was nowhere to found for 30 years, which ruined the best part of her, what would have been the best part of her career. And now she went back to that place, recorded an album with the son of one of the original session players that was on the first album, and The Scene of the Crime delivered her a Grammy Award in retrospect. So that is, I love it so much if things come together like that. And if you don't know it, you think, Scene of the Crime, what is that? And what is she doing with the drive-by truckers anyway? But this is the story. Okay. You should know that.
We got to finish. Last question. Such a development, a musical breakthrough signifying or accompanying or maybe preluding a very important change in society, like what we've been talking about. Do we see anything like that at the moment?
No, we should. We should see it. I mean, this music is the living proof of that fear is your worst guide. If the kids in the early 60s in Alabama would have listened to their parents, there still would have been segregation. But because the music was so strong, they nailed posters of Fats Domino, of Chuck Berry, of Joe Tex, all the black heroes. They nailed that, you know, on their teenage rooms. And if you wake up and you see the smiling face of Joe Tex, a black man, a happy black man, and you're a white kid, that tells you 1,000 times more than Reverend Martin Luther King, who's telling you to trust black people. You know, never underestimate what Martin Luther King did. I mean, he's the biggest American, one of the biggest Americans ever. But this is such a strong force, and it did so much in the reception of, you know, in how the races got closer together. I think the role of music is underestimated in what happened in the 60s in the United States, and it learns as, you know, if in culture general, if we choose to isolate and stick to the old Dutch traditions, we will end up as a museum for folklore. Culture always get richer if you look outside and if you see what's happening around you, and if you're not afraid, if you are willing to stretch your hand and to receive a hand. I mean, I may sound a bit like
you're
my
not a
father.
professor now. You're
no.
Yeah.
I'm really I'm really a worried citizen of the Netherlands. Learn from what the people in America did in the end. I mean, not directed by the government, but what they did. You know, you can't stop the force of music, you can't stop the force of art, you can't stop the force of feeling. If Otis Redding is crying his heart out because of his love that is lost, it is exactly the same feeling that I feel when my love would be lost. So there's no difference between that. And again, the southern soul, the country soul, is a blending of two really different cultural backgrounds that come together. And that's the lesson that we have to learn right now. If you're afraid of the things that happen, or people that come to Holland, no, welcome them. It can only enrich us, and that's my strong and my fierce opinion. We should stretch a hand to anybody who's come here and is prepared or willing to add something of what his color to our color. It makes it only richer. That's the best thing we can learn from this music.
And start making music together.
Start making music, joy, live together.
Leo Blokhuis, thank you very much for a wonderful book, wonderful CDs, and your wonderful stories.
Thank you.
not to hate, not to fight. But I shut him down one night. He was black and I was white. Amos Burke was a friend of mine. Must have danced 4 times. 4 nickel or dime. I always drank a lot behind. Amos Burke was a friend of mine. Must have danced 4 times. 4 nickel or dime. I always drank a lot behind. Amos Burke was a friend of mine. Must have danced 4 times. 4 nickel or dime. I always drank a lot behind. Amos Burke was a friend of mine. Must have danced 4 times. 4 nickel or dime. I always drank a lot behind.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We are to check 1, 2.